Oh, hello, everybody. Hello, Seth.
Hello, Pete.
We are welcome to the live stream for those of you who happen to be able to join us live this fine Friday afternoon. Very excited to be here. We're talking about the parenting plan, Seth's favorite topic
It
in
is one of my
all of
favorite
divorce.
topics. In fact, I was just talking to my son, who's off at college, and I said, I got to go because Pete and I are doing the podcast. And he just finished his midterms. And I
Mhm.
reminded him that this live streamed. So since he just finished midterms, I sensed he had a lot of time on his hands. And all of a sudden, he said he was very busy.
It's uncanny.
Yeah.
Uncanny.
And I
He's
said,
just, oh, the notifications, Dad.
yeah, I said, I am really busy trying to find my checkbook to decide whether or not I'm going to pay your next semester tuition. So, it happens.
Well, I will say this for anybody who is watching the show, you can comment in your platform of choice, whether you're watching on YouTube or LinkedIn or Facebook. I think all those comments will come back into us directly during the live stream. If you have questions, we'll ask them right now for you on the show. And that's what makes the live stream so much fun. That's
That's it.
all. So that's it. All right, let's get started. Welcome to How to Split a Toaster, a divorce podcast about saving your relationships from True Story FM. Today, your kids are going in the toaster.
Welcome to the show, everybody. I'm Seth Nelson. As always, I'm here with my good friend, Pete Wright. Today, we're talking to you, parents. If you're divorcing with kids, the first thing your legal team is going to do is walk you through the importance of a parenting plan. It's the P in our peace process in sorting through all the predictable conflicts around co-parenting can be a foundational experience. I mean, foundational, Pete. Here's what I mean.
Mhm.
It should be smooth in the divorce process, but it's usually not. And we're going to talk through some of those issues today.
Okay, we have talked about the peace process before, and I wonder, just not going into any of the detail, just tell us, what does peace stand for you, so we can give ourselves some
Parenting
context.
plan, equitable distribution, that's division of assets and debts, alimony, child support, and everything else. But we're
Okay.
starting with P, parenting today.
All right. So the parenting plan. Give us a lay of the land. What are the essential components of a Florida parenting plan?
Thank you for
Look what
that.
I'm
Check
going to
your
say.
local
Check your local
jurisdiction.
jurisdictions.
Very
I
good.
get
Ring
very
the
excited.
bell.
I get to do that.
I know.
And why are these components crucial to the great state of Florida?
Okay, we're talking about Florida here, but please, like we're saying, check with your local jurisdiction because I believe the concepts we're talking about here are throughout the United States, but they might be termed a little differently. They might be dealt with it a little differently. So please do that. But the first one is parental responsibility. So that means how are decisions made for the children or the child? And the second one is time sharing. That is, where does that child spend their time? Where do they spend their day? Where do they put their sweet little heads on the pillow at night and wake up the next day during the school year, during holidays, on school breaks, summer breaks? And then the third one is all the other thing that goes along with raising kids. Because, Pete, we're a couple old guys here now. We know that a 2-year-old is different than a 12-year-old, different than a 16-year-old. And
Sure.
so we got to build some of that in, that you can't build in a parenting plan for every what if. So let me translate what I just said into what people usually say when they call me.
Okay.
Is this a custody dispute? So in Florida, we don't have custody disputes because under the law, the word custody isn't there. It is a parenting plan, it's time sharing, it is parental responsibility, and it's all the other stuff.
But
when
Seth,
people
everything I've learned about child custody disputes has the word custody in it because all I know is from movies.
that's
What is Florida doing?
well, sometimes we can be a little behind the curve. So, but think of this: of when you say custody, when you hear me say time sharing, I'm okay if you're thinking custody. Where is this child?
Okay.
Under what parent is their current custody under? Okay. But the old terms used to be custody and visitation. So one parent had custody and the other one had visitation. You don't visit your kids, you raise your kids. It's just a matter of when you have them. Okay.
Okay.
The other one is people will say, well, can I have sole custody? Well, when they say that, I get a little confused because decision making, there can be shared, ultimate, or sole. That is different than can I have time sharing 100% of the time, which would be sole time sharing. So I work with my clients to use the legal terms because that way I know we're communicating.
Okay, so walk me through the differences between those things. What are the implications of somebody who comes to you and says, "I want 100% time sharing,"
Yep.
but I mean, is there such a thing as 50% decision making in those cases?
So
That
it's
seems
not a
weird.
percentage, right? It's not, I've made the following decisions this many
Yeah.
times, 5 times, and now you get to make 5 decisions. But I
Mhm.
get the concept. So if someone comes to me and say, Seth, I want sole custody, I'm going to say, one, there's no custody in Florida, it's time sharing. And are you telling me that you want your child 100% of the time and never to see the other parent? And if they say
Right.
yes, my next question is the other parent in jail? Is the other parent been convicted of sexually assaulting the child? Like, it's got to be something really, really bad. And
Yeah.
even sometimes, okay, if things are bad, their court might order therapy or order supervised time sharing. So, very rarely, and I've only done this once that I can recall in all these years, over 17 years of working in this area of the law. And it was by agreement where a parent had 100% time sharing with one kid and the other parent had like 99% time sharing with the other kid.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. So they split their kids?
They did. They did.
What,
So
Seth? Is it? There's got to be a Lifetime movie made out of that
there
situation.
there could be, and I'm not going to go into the details of it, but
Okay.
it was a very contentious divorce. There was a lot of reasons why these parents decided to do this. And I want to say that it was amicable.
Yeah.
But it ultimately, as these things do, work out for the best.
Well, that was my next question because we hear this all the time. What is in the best interests of the child or children, right? And a situation like that is a perfect segue into that question. How do you arrive and by extension, how does the court determine what is in the best interests of the child?
So in Florida, the court has 20 different factors that they look at in determining a parenting plan. And we've talked about them on the show before, but
Mhm.
just to highlight some of them, um, is the child of sufficient age and maturity to state a preference to the court? So someone will say to me
Sure.
all the time, at what age can my kid decide what they do? I say 18, right? When they're no
Yeah,
longer a kid.
right.
But I've had judges say, this kid's 16 and a half years old. I am not talking to this kid. I don't care. We're not bringing this kid in the courtroom.
Sure.
I've had other judges say, this kid's 16 and a half. Everybody says straight A student, doing well, has a plan for
Savvy.
after high school, very mature. Yeah, I'll talk to him. Kid comes in, gives the preference. Judge says, not doing it. Okay. So kids aren't decision makers. Now, they can ultimately become, quote unquote, a decision maker by their actions. By, I'm not going to mom's, I'm not going to dad's. You can't get me into the car. Right.
Yeah, yeah,
And some judges are like, they're 16 and a half. What do you want me to do, man? Like, come
yeah.
on. Okay. So that's one of the factors. Another factor is the geographical viability of the plan. Now, if we live 10, 20 minutes apart, that's not going to be an issue. If you live an hour and a half apart, that's now going to be a problem because now how early does a child have to get up to go to school?
Mhm.
Another one might be, is there been any domestic violence in the house? Has anybody lied about domestic violence? What is the parent? Another one is, what if a parent, the traditional roles prior to litigation? I was a
Sure.
stay-at-home mom. I was raising them all the time. Dad, you know, if I'm representing dad, due to no fault of his own, judge, they divide this stuff up. No, he didn't go to the doctor's appointment because he was working late to provide
But
financially.
he did
Right.
coach Little League on the weekends. Like
That's right.
they split. Okay.
That's
Yeah.
right. What are the um parents going to do? And are they going to have to delegate any parental time to third parties after the litigation is over? So
Give me an example.
I'm an airline pilot and I say I want 50-50, week on, week off. And the reason that I want 50-50 for my 2-year-old is because I can arrange my schedule where I can fly for a week and be home for a week.
Right.
Well, is it best to have a 2-year-old have a schedule week on, week off? Or am I just creating this schedule because it's best for me to be able to see my kid for a week and go work for a week?
Sure.
Because studies show that's best for 2-year-olds to do more of a 2 days with mom, overnights, 2 overnights with dad, and then the weekends.
Okay.
Because it's frequency of contact. A week is a long time in a 2-year-old's life.
Yeah.
Right. So there's that. There is what is the home, school, and community kind of record of the child. Like, this kid's been in this private school for 7 years, and now you're saying we're going to pull them out because you moved to a
Right.
different school district and it's too far, but the other parent still lives close to the private school and they have the finances, thankfully, to pay for it. So you
Sure.
kind of look at those issues. So there's a lot of things, but what the court doesn't do, Pete, is have any instructions from the appellate court telling them how much weight to give to each of these factors.
That's in the judge's discretion.
100%. So take the scales of justice.
Yeah.
And remember back in chemistry class and weights and measures, like, oh, I'm the one that does all the homework with the child. Little weight on your side.
Okay.
Scales of justice are in your favor, right? And you keep loading it up with all these different things I talk about. And then it's way down. Like, it's as far as the scale can go. But then it's all in your favor. But then the court determines you committed domestic violence in front of the child and puts a massive weight on the other side.
Okay.
So out of 20 factors, you've lost, or you won on 19 of them.
But that last one.
But you lost on one, and the judge can decide what weight to put on that.
Okay.
Now, the judge might say, yeah, it happened. It was an isolated incident. You know, there was a push and a shove. There wasn't a choking or striking with a weapon, right? So it's not as severe, so I'm not going to weight it as much.
Sure.
Entirely up to the court.
Okay. I want to throw in just a little bit of a geographic curveball because you're talking about, the third party element. One party in the let's say the airline pilot says, you know what, I just got word that I need to relocate to a new city, to my hub city. So I'm moving from Florida to Denver. Can you just talk through the sort of machinations in court of figuring out what a parenting plan looks like in that case?
That's simple. It's a great question. And the reason it's so simple is obviously it's never in the best interest of a child to move to Denver.
Right. I agreed way too fast as a guy from Colorado. Yes, Colorado is an amazing place. Please
it is.
Move there. This is not sponsored by the tourism board.
From Denver now.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is what, and you said the magic word actually, Pete, is you said has to relocate because of his job.
Yeah.
And that is now a relocation case, and it's in the statute. It's 61.13001. You can look that up. And it has about 8 or 10 different factors that you look at. And one of them is, by way of example, is what's the reason for the move? Do you have a job offer?
Work.
And or it's required by my job to keep my job. What is the employability options for the non-relocating parent? So if the non-relocating parent, by way of example, is drives a truck for Amazon, they have that job in Tampa and they have that job in Denver.
Okay.
Right. So that's an example.
So this relocation case could explicitly resolve by encouraging the non-relocating partner to become a relocating partner?
Well, if they decide to settle on that, the answer is yes. A court cannot require a parent to move.
Yeah.
The court only has power over that child on where the child's going to spend their time.
Got it.
But ultimately, what happens is you have a long distance parenting plan. If one is in one state, one is the other. And what I mean by that is the kid is going to be with one parent more than the other because that's where they're going to school. And school is roughly 10 months out of the year.
Yeah.
Right? We have breaks in there. So maybe the pilot gets every spring break and the pilot gets the majority of summer. Does the pilot get almost all the summer? Like maybe the non-relocating parent only has the last week of summer to kind of get the child ready for school again.
Mm-hmm.
What do we do about Christmas break and winter break and Thanksgiving and long weekends, right? And what do we do about the cost? I know we're talking about parenting plan, but the cost of travel.
Got to be rolled in there somehow.
That can be rolled into the child support guidelines. So that's how that breaks out.
That gets to my next question. Just how detailed should the parenting plan, and I'll say time sharing, cost sharing schedules be?
So this is a problem. And that is an excellent question. The best thing that you can do with your parenting plan is get it down on paper, agree to it, sign it, and have the court approve it, and then put it away and never look at it again. Because there are millions of people raising children together that do not have written, signed parenting plans. They're called married couples.
Right. I've never done a parenting plan with my wife.
Right. Now, the reason why I say you put it away, I'm not saying that you don't abide by it, but you have to be flexible. You have to adapt. You have to be like, you know what? By way of example, a hurricane is coming that we've just had a series of them in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the day that the schools just closed. Schools usually close a day or two before hurricanes. And the reason for that is because, one, for safety, and two, some of the schools become hurricane shelters. So they need 24 hours to prep before, and then 24 hours to get people in there before the hurricane comes. So school is closed and governmental agencies are starting to close down. This is not the time to argue that it's my overnight. I want to take the child, right? It's, hey, what are you doing for the hurricane? It's my time. The first thing is everybody's safety. I'm okay if you're going to the shelter, or if you're going to evacuate, what's your plan? And I just want makeup time after the storm has passed, and let's make sure everybody's safe.
Yeah.
Right. So don't be such a stickler, right? But the same thing can be, I no longer, by way of example, a client calls me and says, I hate my former in-laws and they're coming into town. I think they're bad for my kid, but my former spouse is asking me for the kids because grandpa and grandma are in town. I'm like, look, you don't have to say yes, but you're going to want a favor in the future.
Yeah.
Like, say yes. It's 2 overnights. Ask for your makeup time. And if you get to the point where you can just do this back and forth without makeup time, it's great. But be careful. And the reason you got to be careful on this is because you don't want to start giving up time, and then come back and say, you never use your time and I want to change the plan.
Okay.
They can use it against you.
Okay. So that, I mean, how do you end up protecting your time and address potential future conflicts in this way? How do you write that into the plan?
Well, what you do is you say parents will be flexible and that they appreciate this is a 50-50 time sharing. And then you can draft something to the point that they appreciate that from 1 month to the next or 1 year to the next, one parent may have more or less time because they've decided to be flexible, and that shall not be used against them as a reason to change the plan.
Oh,
okay.
Well, that sounds fairly easy.
It does. However, I'm going to go way back to your question. How long should this be? That gets drafted because a lawyer has had that issue before. And now it's like, I had this issue in a case 5 years ago. I put it in every one of my plans. And I advise my clients that I need this because we need to protect them and keep this flexible. And they're just.
You're saying that like I'm mocking a stereotypical attorney voice.
That's right.
But what I'm hearing is actually it sounds like kind of a good idea.
Except here's the problem. Then the other attorney goes, all right, Seth, well, I had this other issue in this case.
Oh, so you're stacking.
And then you're stacking. And now a parenting plan that maybe could be 5 pages is 25 pages.
Yeah.
Because we're dealing with all the what ifs. And
That
so
both attorneys have experienced over their careers of dealing with parenting plans.
that's right. Oh, now we're up to 50 pages.
Okay, sounds great.
Right.
So the older attorneys have 100-page parenting.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
But part of that is because they're not double spaced; they're actually single spaced, and they're written in with an
Quill
ink
pens.
in quill pen. I couldn't think of the word. I was like feather, and feather was the
Yeah.
wrong word.
Yeah.
So it, you want to have one that is enforceable, clear, unambiguous. It doesn't have to have flowery language that just is not enforceable. You want
Okay.
it to be, this is what you're supposed to do.
Okay. Follow-on question. You said we're going to create a parenting plan that includes flexible language, that we can both be adaptable and flexible, and we're not going to use it against each other. And then, because we're so flexible and adaptable, we're going to put it away because we're great and we're flexible and adaptable.
Yep.
And yet, there is a method for modifying the parenting plan, right? What's going to trigger an official modification to two flexible and adaptable co-parents?
So if they're flexible and adaptable, you shouldn't be back in court because they're working together. But if there's a problem, you can always go back to court and tell the judge, there's been a substantial change in circumstances. That's a term of art, not of science. And therefore, we need to reopen the parenting plan and figure out what's best for the kids now. There is a host of things that under the law are not substantial change in parenting plans. The child getting older. You don't get to say, Judge, it's a substantial change. He was 2, now he's 12. That is obviously a substantial change. And the other part to this term of art is that what is material, right? And originally it said in the case law and the statute that was unanticipated. So that unanticipated language is now gone, but you still don't get to do just because they got older.
All right.
Okay. Parents bickering. We can't get along. They never agree. Everything's a problem. Nope. Figure it out. Someone moves out of state. That's a substantial change in circumstances. New partner comes into the scene and now there's problems. I'm being prevented from communicating with my kids directly. I'm being prevented from talking to my co-parent because the new partner is like trying to control everything.
Sure.
Right? All of a sudden, the kid is missing school or being late and tardy numerous times with the other co-parent. What's going on over there? Like, hey, at the time of the divorce, my co-parent suffered from addiction issues, but got them clean during the divorce process and was clean for 4 years and now is back on the addiction.
Substantial.
Right. So there's ways to do this, but it's a higher burden. It's a higher bar to get over to reopen the plan.
Okay. You have dropped the word enforceable a number of times in our conversation so far. How do Florida courts handle situations where one parent isn't following the parenting plan?
So let's start with nothing happens fast. So if someone's not abiding by the parenting plan, you can reopen the case by filing a motion and saying, I'm supposed to have them every Sunday night at 7:00, and dad continually does not give me the children, and he keeps them an overnight and drops them off at school on Monday. And you can go to court and say, Judge, this has happened 3 times. I mean, you can do it for 1 time, but it happens 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. I'm asking for a motion for contempt, which some legalese here, and I'll cut it short, but they knew there was an order. They could comply with the order. They willfully did not comply with the order. They are in contempt of court. And therefore, I want you to fine them. I want you to have them pay my attorney's fees, and kept them 4 overnights. I want my makeup time sharing.
Okay.
Okay.
You've now asked the question, can I have all this? It's a motion. We've covered motions twice in our Your
Yeah.
Divorce series. We are wanting the judge to motion the signature on our order 6 months.
I would hope that motion could be done within 3.
Okay.
Hopeful.
All right.
But it's hard to get trial time.
Yeah.
And remember, we talked about temporary relief. And we said, well, why would you go to a temporary relief hearing when you have it a week before the trial? And I said, well, you never know if the trial will get continued. And I jokingly said, because there's a hurricane that could come through. I literally have a case that was supposed to go to trial when the hurricane came through. Got continued. Certainly the right thing to do.
Of course.
Right?
Yeah.
No fault of anyone's. We cannot get another trial date for probably 6 months.
Wow.
And we were ready to go. The other side was ready to go. The judge was ready to go. But the court system's overburdened, understaffed, not enough judges.
And the court system doesn't just move everybody out. The court system just reschedules yours, but the first one they can do that was already scheduled the Monday after the hurricane, that's the case that gets heard.
That's right. We have to get a new date. You're right.
Yeah.
They don't sit there because they can't just shift everybody back a week because you've cleared dates. And if they shift back a week, you got to get the other judges to shift back a week. And, oh, well, judge, I can't do it that week because it's my son's graduation.
Yeah. It wasn't the week
Right.
before.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Got
That's
it.
right.
Okay.
Pete, you're asking really good questions.
I'm very thoughtful about this stuff.
I know that. I know.
I don't know what you want from me, man. I'm very curious. Okay, so we're getting toward the end here, right? And I feel like there is some, I don't know, it's in the peace plan, it's everything else, it's the E, but I feel like there's some parenting everything else. So I'm curious how you handle things like education. We've talked a little bit about schooling so far, but what about like healthcare and extracurricular activities? Let's wrap that up in a nice bow to make it easy for folks, right?
Okay. So I'm going to break these out a little bit. This is really great. We're going to do education and healthcare, and then we're going to do extracurriculars.
Okay.
So education and healthcare are major decisions. So those would fall back into when we talked about parental responsibility and decision making.
Got it. Okay.
So generally speaking, in Florida, if the parent, the overarching theme in all of Florida is what is in the best interest of the child. But when it comes to decision making, you really can't say, well, this parent makes better decisions than that parent on education because I think this school is better than that school, but they're both really good schools. But which one? To get the sole decision making or the ultimate decision making, you have to show that the other parent's decision is detrimental to the child.
That seems hard. That seems hard to do in
education, but not necessarily. Parent keeps moving and changing school districts. That's detrimental.
Detrimental. Okay,
Right.
I get it.
Prescription from the doctor doesn't give the medicine. Right?
Okay.
So there's certainly things that can happen here. Okay.
Yeah.
But if you have shared parental responsibility and you're having a debate about what to do, it's hard to come to that decision. You can go to court, and then ultimately the judge will either say to you, okay, am I allowed to make this one decision, or do I just try to say this parent can make this decision? But look, if this is time sensitive, it's hard getting into court.
Yeah.
Okay. That's different than extracurriculars. Extracurriculars aren't deemed to be a major decision. And a lot of plans will say, Seth, you can sign your kid up for any extracurricular that you want during your time sharing, but you can't make the other parent pay for it. And you can't make the other parent take the child on their time sharing.
This is why we end up with kids who are potentially on 2 different soccer leagues.
Right. And then they get sat on the bench for the games because they didn't show up to practice.
Yeah. Yeah.
No fault of their own, but their parents couldn't agree.
Okay.
Right. So think about the kid, and I get it. Like sometimes going to practice is hard and you're an Uber driver, and how long does it take to get there? But be creative in these solutions so your kids can get the experience of extracurriculars no matter what they may be.
We have in the past done special episodes when something changes in Florida law. We did the alimony change late last year. Is there anything happening right now in parenting law in Florida that you have your eye on? It's pretty stable?
The big change that just came is now there is a presumption of 50-50 time sharing. Now, when I say it's a big change, I think people view it as a big change. In my view, I don't think it's much of a change. And what I mean by that is the starting point now is there's a presumption of equal time sharing, 50-50. And you can overcome that presumption by going through those factors and having the judge find by a preponderance of the evidence that it's in the best interest of the child not to have 50-50. Preponderance of the evidence is the lowest evidentiary weight that we have in the law. The next one...
It sounds bigger than that. It sounds like a big deal. Again, movie law.
Right, movie law. But it's not as big as beyond a reasonable doubt.
Oh, you're right. You're right. That is bigger.
Right.
Oh, this is illuminating.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. Okay. So, and there's another one in between there, but the point is, I don't think it's that big of a change in the law, and I'm gonna, unfortunately, probably have to have some cases that go in my client's favor or against my client, and then get appealed and go to the appellate court and say, judges, tell the trial judges this was not that big of a change, and explain why. So, but that's going to take years to kind of flesh out. But other than that, no, there's no big changes coming.
Okay. So we are, it's November. It's a whole month in my head of just giving thanks, right? I want you to be sitting at a table with me right now and all of your clients, new clients to the firm, and you're going to raise a glass and offer them a toast based on your wisdom of having been doing this for a long time. What do you tell them, these new parents who are new to divorce and they're struggling to agree on a parenting plan? What do you tell them to get started on the right foot?
This whole plan is about your kid, not about you. It's about what you can do to make your child have the best opportunity to become their best self. And the litigation process is going to tear down the co-parent relationship. So you got to weigh the risk of that versus just getting a plan that you can implement. And what I found after all these years, it doesn't matter what the plan is. And here's why. You can have the perfectly written plan, and if the parents can't implement it, it's worthless. You can have no plan at all or a horrible written plan, and if they put it in the drawer and they raise their kid and they're doing a great job, perfect. It's not about the plan. It's about the implementation of the plan. Because I read plans all the time and there's all these ambiguities, but they just can't figure it out because they're trying to go by this plan that's just horribly drafted. I'm like, you guys are just hitting your head against the wall here. Or here's one that's very well drafted, very clear on what's supposed to happen, but you can't get out of each other's way. And you're making it harder. Or someone's trying to be flexible and then you use it against them. So it's about the implementation.
It's about the people. Yep. There you go. That's great, Seth. Thank you.
I basically just said what I do for a living doesn't matter.
Put me in a drawer. I'm worthless.
And I'm thankful for that during this November holiday season.
Yeah, that's the spirit of gratitude that I look for in every conversation that I have with you, Seth. This has been illuminating. I'm glad we took the time to go into this level of detail on the parenting plan. Is there anything you feel like we've missed as we've tackled this one? It's okay if you say no. You don't have to fish for an
No,
answer.
I wasn't. It was kind of like we did the parental responsibility. We really talked about the time sharing. You asked really great questions and how that all gets translated. The everything else, I would just say, let's talk about like how are we going to pay for extracurriculars. Let's talk
Yeah.
about what we're going to do. And these are sometimes what ifs, but what are we going to do on, do we have a right of first refusal if I'm gone for the weekend because I'm working all weekend because I'm prepping for a trial, I'm supposed to have my kid? Like, okay, like
Right.
go to mom's, right? So there's intricacies, like how are we going to communicate? Is it going to be by phone, by text, by our family wizard? Is it going to be through talking parents potentially, or what we're going to do is how are we going to communicate with kids? Is it every night? Like what's the routine?
Yeah.
So
Sure.
we just work
Sure.
those things out.
All right.
So yeah, wasn't
Thank
fishing.
you. That was good. That was really
Yeah.
good. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out and hanging in with this, our walk through your divorce case. This your divorce case series. We're having a lot of fun doing it. Hope it's illuminating to you. Don't forget, you can send questions over to howtosplitatoaster.com. You can send yourself over to howtosplitatoaster.com. Click the button that says ask a question, and then you can type your question in. That's how questions work, and we'll get them answered on an upcoming show. In the meantime, thank you, everybody, for downloading and listening. We appreciate your time and your attention. On behalf of Seth Nelson, America's favorite divorce attorney, I'm Pete Wright, and we'll see you next time right back here on How to Split a Toaster, a divorce podcast about saving your relationships.
Nice